Welcome everyone to another Educators in VR Unity Workgroup meetup. We meet regularly to talk about all things that have to do with Unity topics, from how to make things, do things, build environments, import, optimize, everything you can imagine, combined with we're here to support you if you're going through the Unity Learn program, all the way through programming, game development, teaching, whatever it is for its certification. We're here to support you. And today we're having a special session. We're very excited to have Lance, who is the Director of Logistics for Educators in VR, and he builds many of our environments, including this amazing facilities. We just love this space. It's wonderful. And he's going to be talking about going from Blender to Unity and all the details, tips, techniques, and everything to help you understand how do you bring something from Unity into Blender. So, Lance, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
As ready as I'll ever be.
Okay.
All right, so as she says, this is going to be showing you how you can bring stuff from Blender to Unity and the best way for it to be optimized. Let me... Oh, hold up. There we go. All right, so when you have Blender opened, this is how the layout usually is at the very beginning. Now, you can edit this one cube if you want. Funny thing is, what most people do is they delete the beginning cube. Why? I don't know. I've just always done it myself. But with whatever you want to make in here, you have to make sure that you have specific things set up first. So Unity uses the metric system when it comes to measurements. And some of the times you'll have to change that in the settings. So you would come over here to the little scene section and go to units. Mine's already there, but most of everyone has it set as imperil or imperil. Don't know how I don't know how that says, but that's what most of everyone by default it's set to. For Unity, I would change it to metric. That right there is the same size or scales that Unity uses. So that just makes it so when you're resizing this cube, however you want to resize it, it will come in perfectly for Unity. Now, advice I always give is to make sure you turn on status. This right here shows how heavy everything is in your space. This is the best way to check and make sure whatever you're making, whether it's a object, like maybe I can pick up this cube and move it around, or it's a whole entire environment. The status up here is very important. And the most thing that's important is the triangles. So in objects, each object has triangles. The more faces you add, the more triangles appear. Now, usually people, ask, what are the triangles when I see a square face? So each face has two triangles in there. You can know by doing Control T, which then cuts it up and shows you each triangle on each face. So it says the count is 12. So there are obviously 12 faces here. Now, if I was to invert or add a face by doing Control I, oh, sorry, I meant I, not Control I, I'm now adding a face. The issue is adding a few extra faces, as you can see, increases the triangles to 20. So I'm curious if anyone else knows, how many faces do you think this one face right here has added when I added more faces?
2?
No, how many in total was added just from creating a new section?
Oh,
So you
7?
remember,
Yeah, I was
close.
gonna say 8.
I was going to say
You are
6.
actually correct. So
8?
by doing so, it creates
Oh,
2
yeah.
extra faces per face that you add. So by creating more faces so you can add more detail does increase the amount of triangles. Now, most people won't have it set up so you can see the triangles in there. Most people leave it as what they call quads, which is working with square faces. It holds more detail when it comes to morphing it around and shifting it. So like if I was to move this cube around without it being set as the the triangle bits, you can see it does do something really weird, but you don't see the sharp edges. Now if I was to go into it and re-add the quads, now you can see every morph that has actually been done to it. So you can keep detail by leaving it as a quad, allowing you to play around with the shapes and stuff. Now, obviously, if you want it to be like this, then it could be, a form of a rock or something that you carved out of. So it all depends on how you want to play around with it. Now, so that's the big thing you got to keep in mind when it comes to you working with objects. Triangles and other things that already have that built, the triangle format built in is fine. Again, you can keep track of how many faces there are, how many triangles, and you just want to make sure that you keep your object you're bringing in as low as you possibly can. The heavier it is, the heavier the world becomes, which then one object could easily cause a whole entire world to lag. For tons of people, especially people who are on Quest. Now, you can obviously add more detail to it when it comes to just textures. Now, Blender allows you to put textures within here, and that's this menu right here when you have the object selected. Now, you can have one texture here and just smack one texture on and just play around with that. The issue is most people don't want to do that. So, and this was a really fun thing to learn. You can add as many textures over here as you want. I would always advise in renaming them. So like, let's rename this grass. Let's rename this brick wall. And then just for fun, brick ground. All right, so that's always good to be able to keep track of what textures you're using, because the more objects, or let's say you're building a giant world and you want to reuse one of these, you can click this little circle thing that's right here, right next to the name, and it will bring up every single texture you have in that project, which can become hectic if you have material 1, material 2, brick wall 5, 10, whatever. Then you're like, oh great, which brick did I use for this? It's always good to rename everything. So I've done it a few times where I brought in, let's say, this cube, but I demorphed it and completely changed it to something else entirely, and I kept it as cube. The issue is when I bring it into Unity and I want to play around with it, I may just find cube. Which cube was it? I don't know, because I accidentally named them all cube. So I would always advise changing the name of it. So I can do cube 3 textures, just because it doesn't really matter. You can name it whatever you want. It allows you to keep track of whatever object you're playing with in Unity. So remember, always make sure you name your object, your 3D model. Now, if, as Steph was asking, if you're wanting to play around with textures, right up here, you see these 4 circles. So the first one is basically the grid. It shows you what everything looks like grid form. The next one shows you the mesh, just the mesh, nothing else, just the mesh. The third one is the one I love to use. It will show you what is actually textured. Now you can have solid textures on there, and you can have textures that have patterns or whatever else. You'll see it here. Now, the last one you don't really need to use, but some people who like to play around with the rendering, this is the render texture, meaning it will show you with what it would look like if it was lit up. So I have a sun in here, and the sun right here, I could play around with it and change it up. So, but most of everyone doesn't use that, and everyone usually deletes the sun and the camera, which comes in handy because then you don't have to worry about importing that. But I want to leave those in here on purpose, so for those who do not do that. So if I go back to the rendering tab, when I look around, I can see it completely white because right now it's saying the grass texture is everything. So you can play around with that and change the color. Now, whatever color you put in here, it will export out, luckily. Textures are a bit trickier. That's why I only do my textures within Unity itself. So now that I have the grass set as green, let's turn the brick to red, and then the ground brick, I'll just turn it to a darker gray. All right. So now the fun thing you can do is select the faces that you want the brick texture to be on. And I want that to be on all the side faces. Once you have them selected, you go to assign, and now you can set it up. So now you have a green and red. So that's nice. But now I want to do the brick texture, which I'll select here. Select the color I want, and then click assign. So now, just like how I named it, 3 textures, it now has 3 textures on it. So if I was to rotate it, you'll see now there's a gray texture as well as red and green. So this allows you to play around with textures, meaning you don't have to create more than one object. You can create one scene where it's one material, just multiple materials within it, which, as I said, comes in handy. Now, the issue is, let's say, just like how I mentioned, I want to add a face. You know, I want to extrude this, is what that's called. I usually will push E and extrude that out. Now, what most people don't know is what extrude does is obviously it brings it out more, but it demorphifies the texture that you're playing around with. So if I was to go to UV editing, and this is it will come in handy for you, Steph, and I was to just select everything. So this is usually what the cube format looks like when it, when it's automatically, let's say, UV unwrapped, basically. So if you brought a texture in and it's a cubed form, you would need to make sure it's in this form right here. If you don't like it, you can obviously change it. Now, if I was to select these faces, you see that, right?
Yep.
So even though you can see the 3D model where it's extruded out just like the cube and it just turned it into a rectangle, face-wise for the UV unwrapping, it is stretched out dramatically. It's flat. Meaning if I had a brick texture, right here, it would look perfect as the brick texture. Right here, it'll just be all stretched out. And you usually would not want that. So what you would usually do is, and it's always good to work with cube forms. You can select them and make sure you have the faces that you want to be edited with. You will usually hit U, which brings the UV mapping. Now, UV is what the texture is usually sitting on. Just like how the ground around us right now, each face, each texture is a UV map I had to unwrap.
Uh-huh.
Now, there, and then just so you know, 0.5 came out recently as well, which added even more UV maps, as you can see. They used to just have a small tiny menu, which was this section just right here. Now they've added even more stuff, which is nice. But I always like to go to the view, view from where you're looking. So if I was to do that, let me go ahead and do that. So if I did that, voila. Now only these two faces will perfectly match when I texture it in Unity. But let's say I want them all to be the same thing. So now since I have that one, I will just, so if you wonder what I did, I held down Alt and then I pushed the edge, which what it does is selects everything in that row. I can do the same thing here as well too. Alt, left click, and it does the same thing. Now, with the face selected that I just did, which is this one, I can now do UV again and go to follow activity quads. Just click OK. Now it matched them all up to be the exact same length, meaning now when I texture it, it will be perfect. But the issue is I did the same thing to this face. So now all the other faces will not match and you just repeat it. There you go. Now, if you notice something else that's really weird is this one now made it so all these are going sideways instead of how this one right here is set up to go long ways. So if that ever happens and you don't want that, then you can always just simply rotate the faces within the texturing section. Now it doesn't do anything to this. All it's doing is you're playing around with the faces. So if I was to bring in the, oh geez, okay, never mind. Oh wait, I know what I can do. No, never mind. Okay, usually, as I said, that plays around with editing the face. It won't mess with the object itself. It's just you playing around the faces. Now, if I select everything, you can see it is all selected here. And let's say I just want to edit this section. You can select. Oh yeah, I have that thing right there turned on. You can select the faces to be able to move them around, allowing them to not be overlapping. And sometimes when you are going to bake lighting, you do not want them to overlap if they're using the same texture, because if it's baking this one and baking this section and then these sections are being baked, well then it's going to overlap them and you're going to notice them overlapping. So you always want to make sure that they are never touching when it comes to faces using the same exact texture.
Uh-huh.
And you usually want the same exact texture because that is for optimization. You want to make sure that the object is not usually not using more than one texture, but some of the times you just can't help it. So that is one way to do it right there. And that is how you can play around with how you bring in something. Now, what I really want to do is flatten this out just like how it was, so I can show y'all what it looks like in Unity if you do not do that. I only want one face to do that so you can notice a difference. All right. So the cube is no longer a cube. You may edit the object, demorph it, and change it up. Just like how this world that we're in right now, what I did is I created this world from a simple circle, a flat circle, which means I extruded it a lot and changed it up. Doing so messes up the size, rotation, and location of it. And when you bring it into Unity, sometimes that messes up. So usually what you have to do is you have to apply the transformations that you have created to it. And usually you would push Control A, which brings up your little menu that is to the object you have selected. It won't do everything unless you select everything. Otherwise, it will only do the one object you do. And when you do it, you can do the location, rotation, or size. Or if you just want to go with it, just do all transformations. But let's say that you didn't move it and you only rotated it and played around with the size. You can then just do rotation and size. My advice is always do all transformations just in case. And that makes it so whatever you did, if you made it bigger or smaller, doesn't matter, voila, it's now all properly fixed, making it so when you export it out, Unity will know exactly what it's looking at. Now, this little spot right here that has the little circle, it's kind of hard to see because every time I try to zoom in on it, it just, it still shrinks, it stays the same size. That is your origin point. You can move that origin point wherever you want in this whole entire space. I would always advise it to always stay right there. Because when you bring the object into Unity, it's going to look for where the origin point is, making it so if I was to bring this object in, so if I go into edit mode and just scoot it out so you can at least see what it's going to look like in Unity, if I brought it in and I expect to see it at the 0, 0 point, but I don't see anything there, it's because it's now over here. Which means if I was to rotate it in Unity, it will do this. You wouldn't want that. You want to just be able to just simply do it like this, control where it's going to be facing at the origin point of the object. Now, that comes in handy when you are building worlds. All right, so always make sure you have the origin point exactly where it is. And if you're building a whole entire world and you place objects where they need to be, if you are not going to pick them up and move it around, even though they're halfway across the map, but you're not wanting anyone to pick it up, move it around, interact with it, or anything like that, then what you can do is set the origin point to the 3D cursor and not play with it. And what that does is allows you to put it in the world, type out the 0, 0 coordinates, and it will put it exactly where you had it within your world if you built your world all in Blender.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one way to help you be able to control that. Now, what most people don't know when it comes to extruding is the faces will be inverted or exverted, depending on how you're building. So if I was to go back into the model form where I can see the 3D model, and I was to click this cube on cube, you can see the cube, which is perfect. Now, if I was to go in and I only want to do it to these two faces, I will go to Mesh, Normal, and Flip. Now, if you notice, it's different now. You can still see the white on these, but now you see darkness on these. But when you rotate, you notice something really weird here where there's extra white. So what that does, and this is how you can create an inverted sphere or inverted cube. If you were to bring this into Unity, it will see as these are the faces that go outwards. These are the faces that go inwards. This is how you can see through objects. So just like how in Alt Space, when we did a plane thing, planes are all one-sided. And even though this is a 3D model, it's planes built in with other planes. And the planes are just creating a face. So that means that there's only one-sided. They're all one-sided. They're just all combined into one. So I'll leave it how it is. But if you don't want that, you will have to go in, select it, and then go up to the Mesh, Normal, and Flip. Now, the nice thing though, is let's say you don't want to mess with it and you're making a perfect cube. You can select everything, but this time go to mesh, normal, and there's 2 extra options here. Relocate outside or relocate inside. That makes it so I can turn the whole thing inside out. Or I can fix my mistake and make it so it's back to a regular triangle. And that allows you to make sure all the faces are facing the right way and you're not having people accidentally fall out of your world. So for right now, I'll keep it like that so you can at least see what that looks like in Unity so you can point it out fairly easy. I want to make sure that this face, yes, okay. All right. So now we're going to go to exporting. Sorry, that took a long time. Now, if you're wanting to export, let's say you don't have the object selected. I want this object, but I do not want the sun or the camera, or let's say I had something else in the world and that I didn't want to bring in, and I only wanted the cube. And you don't want to select it or anything like that. What you'll do is you'll go to File, Export, FBX. Unity likes FBX more than anything else, usually. So when you bring it up, you will usually, which I already have the project right here that I want it to be, or where I want it to go in. Boom. Okay, so now the object will be here. Now you can keep it as untitled if you want. It will literally accept it. But just like I talked about renaming objects, name what you want it to be. So I'm going to name it just like how I named it. Q3 textures. .fbx. Now the .fbx obviously makes it so it will be in FBX. You can do .blend, but that's all it's doing is it's creating a saved form. And usually it won't accept that. So just make sure you do FBX or whatever format you're wanting to do. Now you will have this whole menu over here. Now, just like how I talked about what objects you wanted to bring in, you can select that rectangle and make sure you check the box selected object, meaning whatever you have checked is what will be exported. If you don't have that checked, it will bring everything in. You can now as well have it set up so it's only visible objects. So meaning if I went here and made the camera be invisible, I had that selected. It will bring in the cube and the light. It will ignore the camera, which comes in handy if you're wanting to just control what you see to be exported. Now, the last one is called active collections. Now, this section right here is a collection. It's like a group format, basically. It's what you're having within the group. You can create other collections and add more stuff in those collections all you want. And you can deactivate it just like that. And that will make it so if you were to export the object or whatever you're trying to export, will actually go in. So I'm going to do that again. That was interesting. Okay, there we go. Let's repaste this back in. Okay, so right here. So that is what the active collection will do, is it will export any collections you have, which collections are fun to play around with, allowing you to group things together. So you can have sections, like if you're creating a map that you want to only load when someone pops into it, that is a fun way to do so. So now down here is object types. This is what you're going to export. Let's say you don't want to select any of those, but you don't want anything that's empty. Camera, lamp, armature, which is what you use to animate things moving. And since I only want the mesh, I will make sure mesh is checked. Now you can do more than one by holding down Shift and selecting more than one. And as I said, I only want mesh, which is a custom parameter. Properties. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Custom properties. And that right there is what it's going to look. It's going to look and see if there's a mesh. Okay, that's what we're exporting. Is there an armature? Oh, he doesn't want that. And so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Now down here is your transformations. You can play around with these and change them, but make sure though that you try to keep it as Y is up, Z, negative Z is forward, and all locals. Meaning when you bring in the object, it's going to look at the locals that you have set up within Blender and bring them to Unity. Now, something I love is this apply transformation section that's right here. Now, most people will see the triangle with the exclamation point in it, freak out and not click it. The reason that's there is it's still in the experimental stage, but it's still good to use. So if you check it, it allows the object, if you did not apply the transformations or forgot, it will do it for you, which is really nice. So I would advise checking that if you want the transformations to be applied. If you forgot, didn't check it, and then you brought it into Unity and did whatever you want, and then you went back again and then checked it, the issue is it will be in a whole different place. So you got to think, is it worth doing that or not? So, but that's usually after you're already building with whatever you made. Now, down here is the normals. Usually the apply transformations modifiers are turned on, which is good. It's fine. But if you don't want the modifiers, which I can explain that a whole different time because there's a lot to that, that will not apply whatever you did to it. And people use that to create characters, create trees, and a bunch of other stuff. And sometimes they don't want the actual finished product to come in yet, so they will not apply the transformation. So it's always good to turn that off if you do not want to. And there's a bunch of other stuff here that you can usually check, but you're usually not doing anything with them. So just focus on the apply modifiers. Now, again, make sure you name the object. Since I had to redo that. Oh, that was weird. Kind of froze on me a little bit. Cube, green, textures. Now, usually you're the only one, FBX, who will see the object. If you're making it for other people, make sure it's a name that they will understand. Otherwise, it's for you to understand. Trust me, I have a lot of random names in here. I know what each one is. All right, once you do that, you have everything you want done in here. You have everything applied. You can now export. Now, with that being exported, I can now go to my Unity project. And because I saved it directly in the folder itself, here it is, right here. I can now play around with it by dragging it in and smacking it here. Now, it's at the 0, point when you drag it into right there. If you were to just do this, you can see it right on your screen. But as I said, if you want it to be at the origin, you'll do this, select it, and then push F. If you're not looking at the spawn point. Now, if you noticed, there was these two cameras that were already in here. The object itself did not pull the cameras that we had in the space. And that's because we de-checked the camera section and lamp that is right here, which the lamp is the sunlight within Blender. That's just what it's called. That allows you, again, to bring in specifically what you want. Oh, yeah. And if you notice, the name right here is red. Usually, obviously, that indicates you already have a file with that name. If you did something to it, but you still want to keep what you had here, you can come down here and change the name. So like I can do 1 with the space, and now it could be a whole new object. But if I wanted to replace it, then I would select it and then hit export, and it would just replace what I created here. Now, as you could see from this angle, it looks like a cube. From this angle, it looks like a rectangle. All right. So this is what the faces will look like right here. So if I was to go in it and turn, this is what it looks like when the faces are inverted. They're inside. Makes it so anyone can walk through that point, but not this point. They could probably walk through here and fall And if the ground, if the bottom one right here was inverted like that, they will then land on that and be able to walk around. Otherwise, they're just going to fall. Now, you can't see here, but I'm going to smack this brick texture I have and put it here. So you can see the face right here is perfect. It's actually upside down, which again, easily fix, not hard. But you can see this face is perfect. You can see the bricks and everything. This one, on the other hand, is all messy. It's all messed up. It's all like straight lines, looking dimorphed and stuff. And it's supposed to look like, well, that. And that's what happens when you extrude. It usually smooshes the faces, making it so you cannot see what is there. Again, you can easily fix it. And that's the same thing with the doubled face here. So you like to just, toss it into the world to see and be like, oh, I need to fix that. So what I will do is come in here, be like, oh, I can see it. Okay, I'll select these, mesh, normal, flip. Okay, that's fixed. But the face here, this face is all messed up. So what I want to do is make sure that face is selected. UV, follow, done. Okay, I think I like that. Go to File, Export, FBX. And as I said, I want to replace the mesh I just did, and I will export it. Wait a little bit and go back to Unity. As you can see, it did it perfectly. But if you notice something else, now the textures are not aligning, and you want it to align. Okay, well then you'll go back in here again. And this time, you'll do it like this. UV, follow quads, check. I don't want this one, nor that one, and I'll just repeat. UV, follow quads, check. All right. Oh, wait, hang on. So the face that is lit up like that is the one you are working with when you're doing the follow activity quads. So I kind of messed it up when I did that one. So just in case, there we go. I'll do that again. UV, follow quads, check. I will then export it exactly the same way again. Come back in here, and now the faces are fixed. Now it looks like a cubed wall, which is nice. Now we want the grass to be up here. And just because we want the ground down here to be a brick. But as you can see, again, it's messed up down here, while up here, it's perfect. So it just means that now we got to go back in there. And even though it was selected, we now need to deselect these and just repeat the process again. Boom. And there it is fixed. Now, within Unity, you can click on the material you want to play around with and change the tiling. So let's say I want to do 5 and 5. You can see it shrunk it down, and that's the same thing with all the others. But let's say you don't want to play around with changing these and you want them to stay as 1 and 1. So what I will do is select where the photo is, and I will right click the photo I want and hit Show in Explorer. When it does, it brings up all the textures. The one you want to look at is this first one here. So you'll come up here and you will copy, whoops, you will copy the pathway that leads to here. You will then go to Unity. You'll select on the face you want to be editing, which is the brick. You will then click base color and image. You'll then click open, paste it in, look for the texture you want. Just realized I was doing the wrong one. Oh well. So what I want to do now, since I did the wrong one, is go to back to Unity. This time, let's do the brick. There we go. Oh, Unity is loading. There we go. All right, so I will right click it, show an Explorer. Again, copy the pathway. Now go back to here. Now I will actually click on the face that I want or the texture I want. Boom. Well, we don't see it even though we turn that off. Just like how I mentioned, you got to go to the material preview. Now you can see it's all like, wow, messy. So I will select them all. I noticed a mistake that's right here. I'm just going to do the follow again, go back to UV editing, and here is the texture. Now, you are able to edit the texture within here scale-wise, all you want. You can change it up however you wish. You can move it around, and it won't matter. You can make it as big because what it's doing is it's tiling the texture, allowing you to have it exactly how you want it, allowing you to export it once again, replace it, come in, and now as you can see, it's teeny tiny bricks. But that is because the brick is already set to 8. Since we did what we needed to do in Blender, I can now set it to 1, and it will be how I want it since I saw how it was in Blender. Allowing you to edit it and do whatever else you wish. If you want to add more, so if I was to go in here and I was to, let's have some fun and just add a sphere just because. Mesh, sphere. Let's bring it up just to right there. Okay. So now there's just a random sphere, no texture on it, doesn't matter what it is. I will then just repeat my process again, and because I have the mesh checked, it's going to see it's a mesh as well too. Come back in Unity, and now looky what's floating up here. Let's just have some fun and make it be a grassy texture. No, let's do this. No, let's do it. No, I want grass. There we go. See, you can play around with it and change it up. It actually, even though you see over here, you do not see a material, it has a default material. And with that, you can change the textures all you want in Unity, but I'd always advise doing that and name it whatever you want. I'm just going to keep it as a material. It does not matter. The reason it does that is in Unity, if you were to select the object right over where materials is each material you've created. And that's the same thing with this one right here. There was one material, so there's one material. You're going to have as many materials here as you want. Well, as I said, remember triangles and stuff can make it more heavier the more objects you add and a bunch of other stuff. So like if I was to, let's say, bring in a balloon, just like how I did here. Let me actually bring in a different one. That one was giant. All right, so this is what happens when you do not pay attention to the size of the object when you're building it. It can come in as so huge by default. It's as simple as just shrinking it or go into the object and just repeat it and just apply the transformations. Now, out of everything here, the balloon's probably the heaviest out of these two. Because if I was to go in it, you'd see tons of little lines all over the place, and that's the same thing with the stick. So obviously this one has more triangles than these two combined. So that's the heaviest. So obviously you'd have to go in, edit it, and bring it down. That's all I can think of right now. Any questions?
Well, I find a lot of, you covered a lot of things that I think I made mistakes before. So that explained a lot.
Yeah, the axis piece, bringing it in, it always disappeared on me, and I didn't know why. So you cleared that up for me too.
All right, sweet. I'm very happy I was able to help that. I guess I added so much that y'all don't have questions.
Yes.
I got
Yes,
one
we
observation
do.
I could make, that it's still a very awkward process to use two different applications to get this one result. and go back and forth between the applications. I would love to see them collaborate in some way, and
There is I haven't dug too much into it, but I did see that there is something that you can add within Unity itself. I'll try to get it later, but there is a thing you can actually add that allows you to bring it into Unity better than the way I did it. But I like the way I do it because it's
always been done, though. I mean, it's the way it's usually done.
usually yes. Yeah.
It's still pretty cool how you could see it almost immediately. And,
Yeah.
Oh
you
yeah.
know, you know, I mean, it's other tools aren't that integrated. So it was impressive to see the change happen, just by putting it into the location that it expected, and then it would just show. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, going back and forth, they look so similar, the tools. You get almost, without getting used to it, kind of, where am I at?
that is true.
Down at the bottom, it says 107 node options failed to load and were skipped. What does that mean?
That just means that there are some materials in this whole entire project, because it's looking at everything in here, that it's not wanting to load. And that's because I'm not using a good amount of materials within this whole space. So.
Okay. So it's just a general warning. All right.
Yeah, it gives a lot of warnings. I usually clear them because some of them are useless. So.
Okay, they're not okay. Why have you really explained to us, or maybe just if you could cover again, why do we need Blender? Can't we do everything that we need to do in Unity? Why do things in Blender and haul them in? Mm-hmm.
So there is something that Unity has that Blender does, but Blender does it better, which is extruding and playing around with faces.
I don't have that, but it is actually called Pro Builder, and it will allow you to
bring in a Unity cube and be able to select the face and extrude it, just like how I did in Blender right here, where I can go in, select the face, and just simply extrude it, just like that. And you can actually see that happen live right here, where the faces are messed up. But
so it's doing the texture on the faces that Blender does best.
Yes, and luckily with I think it's Blender 5 that I think just recently came out, there is a way to actually have it set up so if you were to extrude it, it will look at the face and create it for you and match it, which is really nice. Unity will do that automatically for you. It will already fix it up. The issue with it is the Unity version of what I just did there in Blender makes it heavier, much heavier, because it's adding things to it, because Unity is not supposed to do that, but it's adding things to this one object, like component-wise, that is just making it much heavier. It isn't good for optimization because it's going to see the faces, the triangles, and it's going to add more and be like, we should put this here, that there we go. It's just how they want it. While Blender allows you to go directly in it. So what could happen is if I selected everything and I was to subdivide. Oh, that's unsubdivide. Oh yeah. I'll break it out and just go to modifiers and just show you. If I was to subdivide this, so that's what it looks like. But if I was to increase the amount of faces, make it all sharp and stuff, I don't want to actually do too much because it's going to cause hectic. What that does, yeah. So obviously, Unity doesn't do that, but it adds more faces to the object. Meaning one face could have up to, if I was to do it like this. There we go. One face could have so many faces. And you don't want this because it may look like it's light, not heavy, but if you were to go into it, there are tons of faces here that do not need to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Which, as you can see up here where it says triangle, each face adds 2 triangles each. So now we're at 6,960 triangles because it added more faces than there needed to be. And that makes it not as heavy. And usually you'd be able to go back in, at least in Blender, select them all, hit delete and hit dissolve faces. And that now makes it so there's one big face. And you can keep doing that over and over again until everything is a nice flat surface, just like how we started off with. So that's what the Unity version does, is it just adds faces where there doesn't need to be. At least when I used it, it wasn't very fun. So Blender allows you to get more in depth of making it more optimized, making it be able to handle even more stuff.
Yeah.
So that's why I would advise Blender more than the Unity thing. Otherwise, I'm going to have to sit here and do, okay, I'm going to duplicate this. I'm now going to rotate it. Now I have a plus sign. The only issue is now there's Z fighting. To fix that, I'd probably just size it just enough. You don't notice it anymore. Oh, but now that's that. So I guess I'll turn it into a nice step. Now they can step down and so on and so forth. So yeah, so that's why I would advise Blender over the Unity version. And it allows you to just go with the flow. So like I did this when Laurel showed me that video of a thing that Blender did. I had some fun and recreated the coffin to the point I actually did the colors and stuff. Now, obviously, this is not. This is pretty heavy because if I go to status, oh, actually, it's actually lighter than the sphere. It's 800, while the other one I did, which is right here, is 900. So the coffin is slightly smaller, triangle-wise, than the other thing we made. And the nice thing about this is I can join these together. I actually made it so there's an inside. You can actually go inside of it. See, now we're in a coffin. So again, this is the same thing with extruding and adding faces. Now, I didn't fix the UVs on this, so I could tell you if I was to put a texture on it, it would be just smacked up, squished, squashed, and all over the place. So I haven't done that yet with this right here. But as you saw, it's easy to do. So I can go in, select the faces, make sure I have the faces that I want selected. Boom, boom, boom. Look from above, do UV, unwrap from view. Now, if I was to put a texture on it, it will look like wood or whatever else I put on there. Brick, it does not matter. I could put anything on there and you'd be able to see it. So, and I could export this out and do the exact same thing and just bring it right into the project and boom, there it is. So. Any other questions or comments? Or I know we're a little bit over, so.
No, I think you did good.
He's good.
Fantastic. I mean, I have a million other questions, but they're nitpicky things because this is so incredibly fascinating. So Lance, I mean, we could be here for hours digging into all of this. Thank you so much, because you do this on a regular basis for educators in VR and on your own, bringing these things back and forth between the two apps. And I think it's really important that we know how to do things from scratch, so to speak, because because using something that just, I can drag and drop it right in and find, you're missing some of the fine points. And I think so having us learn about how to do this from step by step teaches us more about making smarter choices and not having those choices made for us. So that's absolutely brilliant way to do it. Well done, Lance. Just absolutely fantastic. Very proud of you. Did very, very well. Thank you,
Yay.
everyone who's here. Yay!
Thank you.
And it's definitely worth working with Blender, because whatever you make, you have a more deeper connection with the object because you took your time to actually make something yourself. And the nice thing about Blender is you could put it as a SVG, send it to a 3D printer, and legitly 3D print it. That's the cool thing. So
That's all versatility.
Exactly.
Yeah, I want to thank Lance, who's our Director of Logistics for Educators in VR. And I want to thank all of you in the audience for being here. We meet, our Educators in VR Unity Workgroup is fairly new, and we meet twice a month as of right now to really explore all the possibilities. We've had some amazing demonstrations with rigged NPC, non-player characters that can move around your space randomly, and all kinds of, and we've talked about the AI stuff, the Unity certification programs and things. So come join us here in Engage XR to come talk about Unity goodies, Unity topic and stuff. So thanks, everyone.